So that brings us to part 3, deployment, additional features, and reflection. Um, the first step in my app's deployment was with Render. After signing up for an account, I created a new Postgres SQL project that provided me with an internal database URL, which I copied. Next, I created a web service project that hosted my backend files. This allowed me to create a custom domain name to gain access to the Strapi admin dashboard. I had to specify the root directory, the build commands, and that copied database URL to connect the Postgres SQL. This was also where I needed to add my .env file to create the build without errors. As I mentioned in the previous video, none of my database transferred from my local host setup, so I had to spend some time adding the content back in. I used Vercel for the front-end deployment. After I created an account, I attached my GitHub project repo, which I also did this with Render too on my backend. And I also included that copied database URL. Building and deploying went fairly smoothly after that, and I was able to see my site using Vercel's provided domain name. As mentioned in the previous video, I had some trouble with Vercel while I was updating my image code. The other issue besides the images was my CORS. I kept receiving 404 errors. Once I corrected that and purchased the next tier of service with Render, my images finally showed up. While I didn't really develop any additional features, I did use a guide that included Tailwind, which I was unfamiliar with before starting. It was really interesting exploring those features and seeing them in action. Primarily, I needed to adjust my images, so I mostly worked within the realms of my restaurant list and my dish list JSX files. It took a few attempts to get exactly what I was looking for. Additionally, I gave my food app a name and I adjusted the title tag accordingly. If I were to start the project over today, I'd probably start with 2 different repos, one for the front end and one for the back end, as opposed to one repo with the 2 folders within it. This would give me a little bit more flexibility if an error was made. I wouldn't have to disconnect absolutely everything. I just need to replace a few things here and there. From there, I'd probably spend more time with both authentication and Tailwind just so I could better secure and customize my app. For additional features, I would want to build out the homepage to include categories of food types, as well as probably some favorite dishes or popular food. And also, it'd be great to include an account for the users for them to be able to update their information and keep track of their previous orders. Also, just little structural things like an improved logo, a footer with company information, and possibly have the cart feature be built into the header. When you'd click on it, it'd shift the food information over instead of the little box sitting on top of the information. While the deployment was a challenge separate to just building the app, it created a really unique opportunity to troubleshoot and learn basically by mistake. Errors that felt big in the moment turned out to be relatively small, just something missed. And functionality, having the app work while it's deployed really built a lot of my confidence. The capacity to code lies solely in the desire to win. It's really dictated by stubbornness and your frustration tolerance. So I feel like this capstone project encapsulates the entire course really, really well. And that wraps up part 3. Thanks so much.